Hi everyone, it's Samantha Graf Benmore, and I am the one half of the Graf Girls, for those that don't know. And today we will be finding the parallels. Oh, there's Leanne. I'm just gonna have her join. No requests. Oops. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Hold on. Ah, this is not working. Good. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good, thank you.
Different background.
I'm at the office.
Very different. I was just welcoming everybody and about to declare our topic of preparing a home and the client to go to market as opposed to preparing a spouse to go to whether it's court or what do you call it? Mediation.
Mediation?
Mediation, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. So they're both situations where they can be very emotional. And they are both situations where you truly want to work with a professional. And I think that it's important that you trust the person who's helping you to get there, basically, to your goal, your end goal. Oops. Someone else is working from home.
Gee, I wonder who.
Yeah, right? Do you know him?
I'm actually going to be live on Instagram with him later today.
I actually saw that post today and I was laughing. I was like, you're getting a lot of Benmore Graf time.
I am.
Amazing. Okay, so do you want to share perhaps some, if there's any other parallels, and then we could just jump into sort of, if you share sort of how you prepare somebody, and then I can see how that works with the house sort of situation too.
Sure. I mean, I think, we're both dealing with people, both of us have clients who are going through a very stressful time. And, I think that.
Oops. Hold on, you went mute.
Basically.
Oh, there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I was mute for a second.
She's trying to call me. I should put it on focus. But anyway, hopefully she doesn't call back. We're both dealing with clients who are going through something very stressful. And when you look at, research and, that ranks life's most stressful events, I think death of a spouse is first, then divorce. And I know moving also ranks very, very highly up there. So divorce and moving.
Renovation.
Yeah, exactly.
Building a house and renovation.
Yeah. So, I think from that standpoint, well, we're not therapists and we're not coaches per se. Both of us are in a situation where part of our job kind of is a quasi therapy coachy job because, we are dealing with people who are under stress, and we need to recognize that and be compassionate with them and be mindful of it. But we also have to get them to move forward. We can't have them just stuck, because a lot of people, when they're overwhelmed and stressed, they don't want to change anything. They want to stay stuck. And so, it's that balance between moving them forward at a pace that isn't going to completely overwhelm them to shut down, but still moving them forward, because they wouldn't have retained either of us for our services if they didn't want to make, some sort of change.
And I think you actually acknowledge that you're right. It is a change, and it's basically what we both, another parallel is that we are dealing with, yes, an emotional experience, but the emotional experience is really a change of life stage. You know, like somebody could be going from partnership full family to a smaller family because perhaps they have kids and the kids are with them part time. But, you know, the dynamics of family life are changing. And just as Cheryl and I deal a lot with either couples whose kids are off to university, or a spouse has passed, or of course, the spouses are going their separate ways, and they find themselves alone, and making those decisions of where they're going to meet their needs emotionally, but perhaps children's needs, or whether or not are they really going to be there. Am I going to be alone? I don't want too much space. A, because of price, and B, because of you don't want to be in this big house alone. You know, I mean, some people might. I'm not saying everybody, but majority of people don't want that feeling. So I think that emotional change in life is really doing. Plus, there's another parallel. In both our cases, we are typically talking about people's like largest assets, like
Yeah,
you know, like
it's
that's
going to
what we're
affect their future for years to come, whether they're what their divorce settlement is, or buying or selling their largest assets. So it has
right.
repercussions for years to come in their future. So it's a very, very big decisions, and often they have to make these decisions somewhat quickly at times. Like there's sometimes pressure, there's a deadline, or there's an offer, or and they can't, if you can't just weigh it and think about it indefinitely. You have to make a decision. And so it's
Yeah,
important for them to have like the professionals and team that they trust, that can help
absolutely.
them make those decisions in a timely manner.
Yeah, and especially like you said, because there are pressure situations. I mean, in both our businesses, there's offers. You know, there's an offer to
Yeah.
settle. This is my terms,
Yeah.
but you better get back to me by this date, or it's off the table.
Yeah, there's an
Right?
expiry on the
Yeah,
offers in both cases.
exactly. Exactly. So there is an element, a strong element of pressure that is forced upon our clients. And our clients want to know that when they turn to us and say, do you think it's a fair deal? Like, you know, at the end of the day, it's always their choice.
Yeah.
We can only guide, and yes, from our experience, but who would want somebody who, you know, doesn't have the experience and the knowledge? And quite frankly, like in real estate, at least, like the connections and the relationships with other realtors, you know, so you know who you're dealing with. But actually, similar to you guys, I'm sure, like if you did something with Steve, for example, you know Steve, you know the way he deals. You guys are going to hammer this out together. You're going to
Yeah.
represent your clients the best, you know, to make everybody happy, but you're really looking for a meeting of the minds. A lot of people tend to think they're going to hire somebody to like hammer, slam, you know, like fight it down. But really, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We
Yeah.
all want, you know, a reasonable agreement,
Yeah.
and you know, everybody move on with their lives and feel satisfied, feel excited about the new chapter in your life, you
Exactly, and
know.
not look back with any, regret. And I was just thinking as you were speaking too, another parallel in what we're both doing is if people have children, the decisions that they're making with you or I, and also it doesn't just affect them. It is, where someone moves to. It's that's stressful for kids too. Moving homes, and then obviously in my case with parenting and decision making and parenting schedules, it has a huge impact on children. So, one of the things that's hard is when you're making decisions and it's affecting other people who may have a very different agenda or may have different wants or needs than what the decision makers are. And you have to help a client balance all of that too. You have a child who's saying, no, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. Does the child dictate the outcome, or does the adult, dictate the outcome? And that can be challenging to manage with people as well.
For sure. That's actually a very valid point, because, you know, sometimes people make decisions based on their children's needs more than their own. And as you know, admirable as that can be, you know, usually we bring children into the world and it becomes about them, not you so much. But if you're not living a life that you feel, it's sort of the oxygen mask.
Yeah.
You know, theory. You know, if you're no good if you have no oxygen. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
so you have to, you know, make sure that you're your best you, basically, in order to give the kids. Plus, you know, like, let's be real, as you know, I mean, I'm not trying to say it. I'm turning 49. Like, I'm not, you know, in a place where, like, a 17-year-old should dictate my life when I know that they're not learning something for future life. Like, if I protect them so much and give them everything that they want, then they're going to learn or think that's the way the world works. And the world doesn't work that way. You know, there's a lot of disappointments. There's a lot of things that don't go your way. And if we protect them too much and don't allow them to experience the real world, they're living in a bubble.
No, that's true. And you know, and often children don't have all the information either. They may not be aware of the
Yeah,
details of their parents' finances. And so the need, you know, because you don't want to worry them about some of that, but then that means they
yeah,
don't, you know, they don't have that full picture. And so it's important that, you know, while their views and preferences are a consideration, they shouldn't be the driving factor, you know, in any of these decisions. And it doesn't mean you're not a good parent, to, you know, put what's best for you and the family on a, you know, global scale first versus
exactly.
one child or even both, you know, however many children. It's, you know, it's a family, it's a decision for the family.
Yeah. So one thing that I know, I do have to say, like, and I would say this is really old school real estate. And you guys still are at least on Zoom doing your legal representation, and the clients are there, and they might see their spouse, like ex-spouse to be, I guess you call it, you know, to see facial expressions and, you know, their demeanor and everything like that. So I know you guys have to still prep your clients and be like, you know, act this way, do this, you know, show this sensitivity, don't. Whereas in the past, when we used to do live offers, and sometimes the agents would, especially in multiple offers, because that's what's still going on. So I'll use that as an example. When we would have live offers, before the sellers were meeting, because each agent would come into the room and they, you know, give us their offer. We'd read it all together. We'd go over everything. And we would always say, don't react to the number. Like and we always
Have a
did our,
poker face.
right? Like, you
Yeah.
had to. And it was really hard because some people just didn't have it in there. Like, I have to tell you, I've been on offers where literally the person picked it up, looked at it, they whipped it across the room.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
there was such drama. It was like, absolutely not. Go away. Like, I mean, I've had some people just really lose it. They couldn't contain themselves. They were so insulted. And, you know, that's part of our prep too. Never be insulted by the first offer. It's just a first offer. Every Think about being in, I always say, think about being the buyer.
Yeah.
Would you just, if you were the only, especially if you were the only offer, would you just give them what they're asking for? You know, like, most likely not. You would try. And if they sign it back at their asking again, or even higher because they were expecting multiple offers or something like that, so be it. Just take it, you know, but always try to make it work. You know, I mean, especially when you're holding back offers and an offer comes in and they are the only offer, you know, everyone knows, like, and I've done this a few times, like, and there was a condo I remember this happened on, and we really expected multiple offers, and come offer night there was one offer, and the agent and the buyer knew that we had it a little bit lower than it should have been, and they could have come in with a lower number, but they knew that that number was not really what the unit was worth, and they ended up, I think they came in at the asking price, and then they ended up going up, even though they were the only offer, because they said, we truly love it, we know this is going to be our home, and we know it was underpriced. So we got really lucky in that situation, because that doesn't always happen. But
Yeah.
you know, when you're working with educated buyers, they know the value. And let's be real, of course, this was probably 10 years ago, so they're definitely away to the races. Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things too, I think, that we both experience is different people, whether it's professionals or our clients, have different negotiating styles. And, you know, there's the people who are always looking for a deal and the people who always need to feel like they won. Then there's more the collaborative style where, you know, can we have just a win-win where everyone's happy? And there's people who want to come in low ball, you know, in hopes of, you know, but then there's people who get insulted with the low ball, and then there's people who will come in with their best offer right off the, you know, I'm not playing games, this is it, this is what I'm willing to pay,
one shot deal.
Yeah. And so I find that's one of the challenges, is that we have to interact with different negotiating styles on the other end. And when you start a transaction, you don't always know what the negotiating style is of the other side until you kind of start rolling up your sleeves and getting into the midst of it. And that can affect how we respond to it as well, because, you know, I feel like if you have somebody who's a low baller and then you have somebody who's going to get just insulted and want to walk away, you have to be able to control either, you know, the low baller is like, come on, you need to come up. But the person who is insulted and wants to walk away, maybe you want to get them to come back to the table and not be so offended that they don't even want to negotiate with this person.
Yeah, and then there's a similarity in that as well as what you were just addressing, because we both, as professionals, have to know our clients, and the way they're best to, quite frankly, be dealt with. You know, like, how should we present it? And then, similarly, another thing that's similar for us is that our relationships with the other counsel in your situation and realtor in ours is, we have to be able to communicate with our colleague, basically, and say, you know what, this is the way my client deals. What's your client's way? Because I know that I have found myself saying that to other agents. I'm like, look, you know, in order to make everybody feel like they won, I think this is the way we have to make it work. We are mediators. Like, we're mediators.
Yeah.
That's what we are.
And it's hard because you have the client, you can't, obviously you have your client's interest, and they're, you know, paying you or I, that we're protecting their interests, we're advocating for their interests. But part of that, you do kind of have to mediate on some level while still protecting that interest. And I know, you know, one of the challenges I find sometimes is if you have a client who really is unreasonable and you're trying to get them to move to a position that really is more in line and more reasonable, and they don't want to move, or the other side is, you know, I've had lawyers say to me, you know, look, I totally get where your client is coming from. I totally get it, but I just can't get my client to move. That like he's entrenched in that position. He knows that I think he should move from it, but he's not following my advice. Now, I don't know. To me, that's a little bit throwing. I would never be that open with the other side to that degree. But, you know, I do think sometimes our view isn't always our clients, and we have to be able to work in that type of situation as well.
Yeah, it's true. And similarly, when you talk about our view isn't always our client's view, you know, I could be representing the seller and the seller wants X for the house. And quite frankly, I know it's not worth that. But, and I've told them that, and I've told them not to expect that. All I can do is educate them. And at the end of the day, both of our practices are basically getting a meeting of the minds. And, you know, if we don't have, I mean, in real estate, if we don't have a meeting of the minds, we do not have a agreement of purchase and sale, quite frankly. And perhaps, I guess, to draw the parallel in yours, you simply just keep going on until, quite frankly, they switch lawyers.
Oh, I can't hear you for some reason. Your sound cut out there. Yeah, it's better now.
Sorry, it was somebody was calling through.
Yeah.
I don't know how to get that. Like, yeah. So I was saying that, you know, you could sit on the market for months and months and months, and you know, like, they, to the point where they, you know, if you don't, I mean, we have to fire our clients sometimes, right? That's just the way it is. And, you know, that takes a lot, you know, because we've educated the seller, you've educated your client. You're like, look, like, I mean, somebody's got to give here. I mean, you can sit on the market. We'll continue to represent you, but you're not getting showings. You know, you're not getting offers. And then maybe one day somebody will give in, which is sort of like your situation too. You could just sit there, just let it drag. There'll be no like final resolution, quite frankly. And then their file just sits open until somebody says, okay, I'll do this. You know, I agree to the last thing they said, and they prepare it and then they sign off.
Yeah, no, and it can be very hard when you have a client who, you know, doesn't want to follow your advice, and that can, you know, to me, that can lead to just a breakdown in the relationship. Because, you know, if I have a client who on enough significant, you know, issues is not going to listen to me, like, I'm not prepared. Like, I had a client a little while ago who was refusing to pay child support. He had children. He has to pay child support. And I said to him, I'm not prepared to go into court and argue in front of a judge that you should not have to pay child support. So, you know, if it comes to that, I'm not going to do that, because there's no argument to be made. And so, you know, like, sometimes, you know, that's in both I think our situations, like, there comes a point where, you know, if the client is really, as much as we want to work with them and we want to make it work, there's a point where, you know, to me, that just shows he doesn't have confidence in what I'm saying and trust me. So go find someone else and who will work with you on that.
And that circles back to where we started in saying that, you know, you really do have to have trust in whatever professional you choose to work with, so that when that's part of our job. When it's a little sticky and we know that I mean, yes, we understand why the client doesn't want that, but we also have enough experience in these situations. We're able to read the other lawyer, realtor. We're able to read the other buyer or seller. You know, we know that, or party, the other spouses, you know, we know what's going to happen. And at the end of the day, they're going to kick themselves, you know, because they didn't pay the extra $5,000, whether it was a house or for child support or some bill that they wanted them to pay. It's such a minimal amount. And then you're stressed by not completing something in your life, completing things, cutting the little phrase of the thread, like, just that is what allows you to move on in life. I always say, feel your feelings. If you're upset, you're upset. If you're sad, you're sad. Don't sweep it under the carpet, because it's never going to be over. You're always going to have that, and then you're going to blow, and that blow is not going to be good. And it's very similar, right? Like,
it's very similar. And I think as well, like, if people are out there and they're looking for a realtor or they're looking for a lawyer, it's important that you hire someone who is willing to have difficult conversations with you, because we could all have,
Yeah.
you know, the realtor or the lawyer, you go have your consultation and they tell you everything you want to hear because they want to get your business. But meanwhile, what they're telling you, you're not going to get for your house, or it's not on your case, you're not going to get that. And they do that to get your business. And then meanwhile, that's, you know, you end up having something happen down the road and you're disappointed because your professional really did not have the conversation with you, the difficult conversation that they should have had. And so I think when you're looking to hire someone, it is really important that you don't just go with the one who, you know, fluffs you up and tells you everything you want to hear. You need to look at what they're saying and, you know, are they being completely honest with you about the situation?
Yeah, we call it in real estate, we call it bidding for a listing. So
Yeah.
I just had a conversation yesterday with somebody. I had a consult, and it was by phone with like the children of a parent, and they said to me, you know, I said to them, I have to tell you, by the way, a few things. One, when we tell you when we go to the next stage of, you know, evaluating the house and everything, then we are going to tell you a very realistic price. If you get more, fantastic. But we are going to give you a range of where we see it going. We're going to give you the price that we believe is going to meet the needs that you want, depending on their timing. If they want to sell it fast, or they need to sell it fast, or, you know, there's an event coming up. Like, there's all sorts of reasons. So there's a lot of little questions you have to ask, that whether they work for you, like that particular client, or not. So just like every family is different and their needs that you deal with, there's a family within the home that we typically deal with, and we need to meet their needs and their schedule. And I said to them, you know, there'll be somebody else that will tell you that the house is worth more than what we say. Perhaps they're right. Maybe you'll get that. You know, this market is definitely a little crazy. But that being said, you know, we give a very realistic, because we're not bidding for your listing. We're showing you what we know. We're sharing our experience, our knowledge, our strategy. And, you know, that's why you hire a professional. Otherwise, go sell the house yourself, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Like, you go do all the work that, you know, and see how it goes. And kudos to you if you get lucky, you know. But then when you be sitting there saying, wow, if I hired a professional, I wonder how much more I would get. So I had to have this hard conversation too with a client yesterday about commissions. And they're like, well, you know, so-and-so charges this percent. I said, I'm not so-and-so, and you know what? I don't know who I didn't know who the agent was, quite frankly. And I said, as you know, you get what you pay for. We all know that. And, you know, I totally respect if that's what you choose to do, then by all means. But this is what we're going to do for you, and we know what you're going to, you know. So, you know, and at the end of the day, there's always that, especially because both of us need to have very strong negotiating skills in our practices. So, you know, if somebody knocks me down in commission right away, what kind of negotiator am I? And just remember something. If you knocked me down on my own commission, which affects me, quite frankly, do you not think I'm just going to give your house away? It doesn't really bug me. I don't really care. I'll move on to the next one. That's the mentality of the person you're hiring who cuts their commission. All they're thinking is numbers. They're going fast. I call them love them and leave them realtors, right? They're just on to the next one. They just want the sign in the ground, and like they're doing whatever. They could care less. I win some, I lose some is the way they look at it.
Yeah. It's just volume.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. No, and I mean, I find, you know, legal fees are always a very, you know, sensitive issue with clients. I mean,
that's a parallel. That's a parallel.
I don't get asked to discount it. but a lot of people want to talk to me for free, and they want to have free consultations, and they want to, when they get their bill, they're not happy about something. And, it is hard because, lawyers' fees are expensive, real estate commissions, are expensive. But people, I think, don't always realize all the work that goes in, behind that number. And, that's what the challenge is that I think if people really had a really good understanding of how much work is going into it, then, they would understand the value of the number and why the number is, what it is. But, I guess, and I agree with you. I think you get what you pay for. That's a reality as well. I mean, once in a while you might get lucky that you get someone who's newer to a business, and they happen to be very smart and capable and hardworking, and they're going to rise and be a superstar as they get more experience. But, a lot of times that's not, what you're getting when you're paying less for something. And, like when you're dealing with such big numbers and such important things as what you're dealing with in family law or real estate, like you need to have trust in the experience of the people that you're working with.
Yeah. So on that note, I will let you go. I have a house to go finish up.
Gee, I wonder where that is.
Well, there was a post about it today, so if anyone wants to know, they can check it out. Look, everybody, I think Leanne and I especially, by the way, we're both Cancer signs, so we're able to do that whole coaching, empathy thing naturally and organically. But it's really been, I think, our life experience, our personal life experiences, combined with our professional experience, that has really allowed both of us to be at the top of our game, basically, in both our industries. Because of the nature of who we are, we've actually both helped other professionals in our industry who are new to the business, and we're happy to help and be that role model, be that mentor, be that person. Just ask me a question, and you know what, like it takes a certain person to be that. And if people are willing to do that for others in their industry and everything, and we have the relationships that we have in our businesses, I think you're usually in pretty good hands. So
I agree.
That's that. I will you get back to taking care of your clients, and I will go take care of mine.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure to join you.
Thank you. Always have an awesome Tuesday. I'll see you later.
You too. Bye. Bye.